615-737-1045. You want to call in, talk about the announcement of Nico Iamaleava as the starting quarterback for the Citrus Bowl. So what will this Tennessee offense look like next Monday? It's worth diving into, given that the most important part has now changed around. Milton opting out, I guess. I don't even want to call it an opt-out because he never said opt-out. It's being written like Go Vols 247 right now. Who wrote this? Patrick Brown. I don't know who Patrick Brown is.
I know Patrick.
Okay.
Good guy.
Well, no, I meant no offense. It just wasn't Ryan Callahan, so I didn't recognize the name. The headline is that Joe Milton is opting out of the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, and the statement doesn't necessarily read that way. So until such time as we have confirmation of an opt-out, we won't call it that.
Well, he's opting out, right? I mean, whether it
He's
was
getting ready for the draft process.
Right, whether it was his decision or Josh Heupel's, Joe Milton is able to play, and he is not playing.
Somebody opted Joe Milton out.
Yes, he has been opted out of the Citrus Bowl.
Okay, that's fine.
In favor of Nico Iamaleava, which, by the way, I don't know what the ESPN crew is for the Citrus Bowl, but I imagine they are feverishly practicing Nico's name after learning this news.
No. Some poor play-by-play person who was not anticipating this at all. You can't get much more simplistic than Joe Milton.
I don't know what the crew is, but it's the Citrus Bowl. It's a New Year's Day bowl game. They will be made of professionals. I expect Nico's last name to be pronounced perfectly each and every time.
Okay, well, I'm sure Vols fans will handle that diplomatically when
Yes.
it is not when there's just even one slip up. What's the worst way that you've heard it pronounced? Because he hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities. So it's not like a ton of play-by-play guys have taken a crack at it, or play-by-play guys or gals have taken a crack at it.
Take your pick. Just rearrange the letters. Iamaleava, like
Iamaleava.
A lot of people skip that A on the Iama. People just go the Iamaleava. You know what I mean? Like, just rearrange the words however you want, or the letters, and that's how somebody somewhere along the way has pronounced Nico's name incorrectly.
All right. Well, I'm not rooting against the ESPN crew on New Year's Day, but I am kind of rooting against whoever the play-by-play person is just once, just to see the reaction on social media. Anyway, so now it's Nico time, basically, and it will be Nico time for the foreseeable future for the University of Tennessee. It is curious, though, because the career best performance was when for Joe? Vandy?
Yes.
He seemed intent on playing not that long ago. And as you mentioned, they've been in Orlando for a little while now. So now comes Nico with this kind of situation where he's going to have to wade through the waters. He's had plenty of time to kind of get comfortable within the offense, to understand the language, to understand his teammates and things like that. And I'm certain prior to the announcement that they have been aware of this circumstance before it was made public. So safe to say there's been some preparations made around this prior to them announcing the decision. But I am curious to see what it kind of looks like out there, and if it's substantially different from what we've associated with Joe Milton, just because their skill set is not the same. Now, in a perfect world, you hope that Nico's a more well-rounded player at the position. He's a freshman. There's going to be some bumps and bruises. There were even in the small moments in time where he's been able to enter when games have been out of hand in favor of Tennessee, and they're just trying to get him some reps. But what is this offense now going to look like, Lucas, in the Citrus Bowl against the Iowa defense?
That's the biggest question. For me, it's just about the operation. It's not even about how many points they score or how many first downs or net yardage. It's just about what does the operation look like with Nico behind center. Because I think there was a significant drop-off this year with Tennessee when it comes to the tempo that they want to run, the tempo that we saw devastate defenses in 2022 under Josh Heupel. And so I decided to pull up because we've looked a lot at just how many plays Tennessee runs per game, and contrasting that with the time of possession is fascinating sometimes. But I was curious where Tennessee ranked among college football teams last season in plays per game. Buck, what do you think Tennessee ranked in all of college football? You don't have to give me an exact, give me a 20s, 30s, 40s, teens, a general spot where you think Tennessee ranked last season, 2022.
First.
You thought they were first in the country in plays per game. They were not. They were 34th with 74 plays run per game. For context, Texas Tech ran 89 plays per game last season.
Oh, my God.
Which is insane.
So, wait. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Because the number that I have associated with them, and I wasn't paying close enough attention. When we've talked about the Vols and the pace before, we've talked about plays per minute. And you've said they're plays per game. Now, those two things, can be conflated. But the rate of speed, and I just wonder if there's any disparity between plays per minute, which CFBstats.com does well to track, and plays per game, and whether there's not some kind of disparity in their rankings there. That's on me for not listening to you closely enough.
No,
that's
an interesting thought. We should look up the plays per minute.
I can do that
for Tennessee last year versus
you make
this
your
year.
Point about plays per game.
But I can tell you that Tennessee ranked 34th in the country. They ran 74 plays per game in the 2022 season. This season, Tennessee dropped off into the 40s, where they ran 70.7 plays per game. So they dropped about 10 spots in the rankings. The number one team in college football in plays run per game this season, South Florida. The Bulls, who ran 82 plays per game, who are head coached by former Tennessee offensive coordinator Alex Golesh, who brought that system down to Tampa. But
that's interesting.
Whatever metric we want to bring up, there was a significant drop-off in how Tennessee was able to attack defenses and keep defenses off kilter with that tempo, whether it was pre-snap penalties, whether it was game management, the tempo that was run or not run as effectively by Joe Milton at quarterback, just with the feel for the game that we talk about all the time when it comes to Joe. I am fascinated to see how instinctual that is for Nico, because it's going to be a process for Nico Iamaleava. I'll be surprised if he comes in and he lights up an Iowa defense that is one of the best in the country. Doesn't matter the conference. So don't expect Nico to come in and throw for 400 and it looks like Hendon Hooker against Alabama in 2022. For me, it's just about the operation and how quick the game appears to be moving for him in the pocket. This season, Nico 16 of 26 in his limited reps, so a 61.5% completion percentage for 163 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions.
You used a word that I really liked there, instinctual. How instinctual is it for the quarterbacks? Because that's really what it comes down to. In this offense, more than many others, I won't say more than any other, because there's a lot of teams running. I mean, I know it's an air raid, but it's technically predicated off their ability to run the football, so you can kind of distinguish it however you want. But the point is, the thing that made Hendon Hooker such a turnkey fit in this offense was not overwhelming physical gifts, was not a superpower processor isolating and eliminating out there because you're not running a pro-style offense. Instinctualness, and you have to have knowledge, you have to be prepared, you have to be able to execute, you have to have a full grasp of these things, but there is no way to truly teach instincts for a quarterback. Stroud is a great example of this in the pros. The S2 cognitive testing would have told you that C.J. Stroud would have been the worst quarterback of the bunch. And what has he done out there when he's been available? And by the way, it sounds like he's going to play this week against the Titans. We can get to that a little later, if not today, tomorrow. The idea that instinct is the thing that we probably know the least about Nico, right? I don't want to say that Joe lacks instinct, because that's impossible for me to quantify. But there is a level of continuity that you would like a quarterback in that system to be able to provide, especially when you're running so many plays out of the same formations. The same formations to be able to operate a variety of different plays to keep the defense on its heels. They do this at the pros, obviously. They should do this at every level of football. I can't speak for, grade school and high school and stuff like that. But to operate as many plays as the Tennessee Vols offense needs to out of the same personnel groupings, and Hendon Hooker's ability to do it almost, I don't want to say seamlessly, but damn near. And Joe made it a lot more clunky because he's just not that kind of consistent level of player. He's not that level of instinctual within this offense. These are the kind of things that we may not necessarily learn on Monday against Iowa in the middle of the day. By the way, we're not on the air that day, so you're going to be listening to Tennessee Vols. You're going to be listening to Nico instead of us.
Starts at 10 a.m. Vol Network coverage for a noon kickoff.
How about that?
And by the way, Dave Fleming and Brock Osweiler will be in the booth for Tennessee versus Iowa.
I'm sorry, Brock Osweiler?
Brock Osweiler, who's doing a lot of work for
Houston
ESPN.
Texans legend?
That's right. So the onus will be on them to nail the pronunciation.
Should we try and get Osweiler on here? I feel like that would be. I have zero connections to Brock Osweiler, but I can try and dig somebody up at ESPN that might be able to get him for us, given that it's Texans week, and also Bill O'Brien handed him one of the biggest bags of money without ever meeting the man.
Let's talk about that.
I would like to. After we do the Nico stuff, I would like to act.
Brad, before we get to the Citrus Bowl.
Don't you want to know how that all played out? That's one of the most ridiculous contracts in the history of the NFL to me. He's the only player in NFL history I can think of that was NBA salary dumped to the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember a deal like that. So, yeah, I would like to start there with Brock Osweiler and then move to Nico. We'll see what we can do.
But to keep track of the opt-outs and what will or won't be around Nico, the backfield for Tennessee just got very young for the Citrus Bowl. We're not going to see Jalen Wright. He's off to the NFL draft after a 1,000-yard season. First one for the Vols since 2015. We're not going to see Jabari Small. So Dylan Sampson and Cam Seldon, come on down alongside your freshman quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, and a veteran offensive line. Because you have Cooper Mays and John Campbell who have announced they're coming back, and Gerald Mincey, and those are all good things for Tennessee. So up front, and I wonder how much that also played into this decision for Josh Heupel, because he's been asked several times this season after games, why not throw in Nico earlier? Why not get Nico more than, 3 series against UConn in a game you won 56-3 or whatever it was? And oftentimes, Heupel's answer has been in relation to a lot of moving parts up front on the offensive line, whether they were missing guys, whether they decided to cycle in some younger guys on the offensive line, didn't want to put Nico in that position. Now you're looking at a full-strength unit for Tennessee going into that game up front with Nico and some really young backs around it, and the wide receiver core remaining pretty much the same, obviously, without Brew McCoy. And I assume Deontay Thornton, who sprained his ankle against Missouri, haven't seen anything about him potentially coming back to play in that game. So it'll be interesting. He'll have a put-together offensive line, but a young backfield to make that debut with.
615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. What are your thoughts on Nico Iamaleava making the start in the Citrus Bowl for the Tennessee Volunteers? I almost said the Tennessee Titans. Can't be doing that, although there is quarterback stuff with the Titans that we will get to a little later. Before we go to the phones, a quick reminder that 3HL is going to be out at Buffalo Wild Wings in Gallatin for the next Titans football feast. You can stop by for your chance to win tickets and giveaways each hour, thanks to Miller Lite and Buffalo Wild Wings. You can see the full schedule by visiting 1045thezone.com/TFF. The F&M Bank chat, TN Berg says Dylan Sampson is the best of the bunch in his opinion. Cam Seldon and Dylan Sampson are two players. I mean, you felt really good about the Vols backfield this year, just generally. And because the offensive line, after Cooper Mays got back in the lineup, we talked about this, that was so central to everything that they were trying to do and how that offense needs to run, the fluidity of it. Against Iowa, I don't know what kind of success they're going to have running the football, which makes this matchup even more fascinating for the purposes of evaluating Nico. Because I think they're going to be put in more drop-back situations with Nico, and I don't know, maybe not more drop-back situations, because there were a lot of circumstances where they would try to run the ball, where they weren't able to, where they would have decent amount of success, but not able to necessarily convert for first downs, and then have Joe try to do something through the air and with varying results. But if they can't run the football against Iowa, I mean, that's not necessarily what you want for Nico. You would like to see them have a balance. You want to see them win the football game. And to do that, you need the most balanced approach humanly possible. But I am fascinated to see what kind of adjustments, if any, the coaching staff makes if Iowa does what Iowa typically does, which is stonewall your running game.
Iowa ranks 12th in the country this season in opponent rush yards per game with 101.9 allowed. Tennessee ranks 12th in the country in rush yards forced per game, averaging 202.6 this season. And then you take into account Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, responsible for the vast majority of that yardage, not playing in this game. So this is a big test. Big test for Selden, for Sampson, and for Nico, and a solid glimpse into next season for Tennessee, because as veteran as the offensive line's going to be, all those guys are going to be back next year. The guys that you expect to see in the bowl game for the most part, as well as at wide receiver with Squirrel White and Deontay Thornton, and I suppose it's Ramel Keaton's final game as a Tennessee Vol. But this is what Tennessee fans were pining for in those games against UConn, against UTSA, a glimpse into what 2024 is going to look like, with the hope that 8-4 in 2023 is a transition, is a jumping off point into next season, a springboard into next season. And now you're going to get that against probably the best defense you could ask to get it against in a bowl game setting. I don't know that Tennessee could be matched up with a better defense in a bowl game outside of the college football playoff. I really don't. So Tennessee's defense is going to have to show up as well and not be embarrassed by an Iowa offense that can't throw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage. But this game, like you said, got 1,000 times more interesting, I think, to even Tennessee fans who are going to be invested in it no matter what. But I think every Tennessee fan is kind of perking up, is sitting up in their seat today, and just got that much more excited for the Citrus Bowl.
Is this now the most interesting bowl game for an SEC team, non-college football playoff related? Because they start tonight with A&M and Oklahoma State.
The dynamics of the Georgia-Florida State game are,
the SEC
fascinating.
teams playing bowl games, by the way.
Right. Well, why don't we talk about that with the SEC observations coming up?
Do you want to leave yourself a little extra time?
Sure.
Okay, that's next.